Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mozilla Learning Community Call. Mozilla Learning rallies and connects leaders who want to advance the promise of the internet for learning in a networked world, and our community call is one of the ways that we strive to accomplish that. So thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Christina Gore, and I just want to thank everyone who's watching and participating with us live. We've moved over to the YouTube Live program for streaming this month. So if you know of someone who's trying to find us, please have them go to our YouTube channel, which is linked on line 7 of the Etherpad. The Etherpad can still be found at learning.mozilla.org/community/community call, so you can find us there. And if you're watching the archive, we're glad to have you with us as well. Lainey DeCourcy from Mozilla is also with me today, and we're going to be discussing ways to engage young people in current events and civic discussion. Our goal is to rally around youth to encourage their voices to be heard in relevant local, national, and global conversations while promoting web literacy and 21st century skills. I'll turn it over to her in just a minute to introduce herself and our special guest. For now, let's get a few housekeeping items out of the way. If you've never been on an Etherpad before, it's really easy to use. You can find instructions on line 10. And just a quick introduction, there's a box in the upper right-hand corner where you can tell us your name and assign a color to yourself, and that helps us know who's participating in the discussion on the left-hand side, which is where we'll be taking notes, and you can ask questions. And then there's also a chat in the lower right-hand box where you can ask questions and engage with us there as well. Please also add your name to the roll call, which is on line 16. So thanks for those of you who have already done that. And if you have any questions, like I said, add your thoughts, your resources that are relevant to the discussion to the Etherpad throughout our conversation. We'd really love to have active participation from everyone today. So thanks again for joining us. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lainey.
Hello, I'm Lainey DeCourcy. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm a program manager with Mozilla. And this month on our Mozilla Learning Community Call, we're talking about youth civic engagement. And we're going to hear about a few different campaigns and programs that aim to connect young people with current events and issues in their communities and empower them to participate in civic discussions and actions. So we're going to hear about how youth participation helps strengthen democracy, and how with the internet and technology so embedded in our daily lives, how things like web literacy and 21st century skills can really enhance opportunities for young people to be more active agents of change. So we have 3 presenters today who are each going to share a bit about their programs, and then we'll do a Q&A. Again, you can feel free to post questions in the Etherpad at any time. So we will go ahead and get started. First, we have Rachel Roberson, who is KQED's News Education Manager. She has a global education background. She actually started teaching as a Peace Corps volunteer in Cameroon, and she's also been a teacher leader for reading, writing, and social studies at schools in Abu Dhabi, Texas, and San Francisco. And we're really excited. Mozilla is very excited to be a partner on KQED and the National Writing Project's Letters to the Next President 2.0 campaign, which Rachel will tell us more about now. So I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Great. Thank you so much. And hi, everyone. I'm so glad that you're able to join us today. Talk about Letters to the Next President 2.0, which is a great that invites middle and high school students, so mostly teens, ages 13 to 18, to create a letter to the next president based on an issue that they care about. And I say create because it does not have to be a text letter. The reason that we're calling this Letters to the President 2.0 is because we're now in a world where video and audio and images are very resonant with teens, and so that they can use any of those formats to create their letter about an issue that they care about. Then they are able to publish that letter on the Letters to the Next President website, which is linked in the Etherpad, and I encourage you to click on over anytime, where they and any visitor can also view letters from other teams. So they have an authentic platform to publish their thoughts, And they also have a platform where they can see what other students are doing throughout the United States. One thing that excites me as a teacher is how authentic this publishing platform is. And it's definitely driven by the teams. Their adult mentor signs up, creates a site, but the teams themselves are the ones who publish and create and kind of take the reins. A couple things that we're also excited about, and the way this project really empowers youth voice, is that youth can also tag their letters, and it's an open tag, and so they can really kind of drill down to what issue and what kind of categories of issue mean to how they align with their issue, and then those can be their tags. And by aggregating the tags on the site, as you'll see, you can really see what is popping out as issues that youth are really concerned about throughout the nation. So far, we have over, I think I checked this morning, 225 creations published, but we have thousands on the back end that are still in draft form. So we have representatives from almost every state and schools kind of throughout the United States who are excited to participate. And the letters will be open until Election Day. So students can publish until Election Day, and the site will be up through the inauguration in the first 100 days. And so we're excited about, once the letters are published, still continuing this as a resource that people can visit and check in on. And we're also talking about ways to get that to the next president. Some of the challenges, I already have a question about the differences and challenges that we've come up with, as well as the successes. One of the things that's been really wonderful is to see the variety of media that the youth have chosen to express themselves about their issue. So we have video letters, we have spoken word pieces, we have infographics, we have text letters and images, we have collages, we have political art. There's just so much up there, and there's so much freedom in terms of the way that any student can express anything about an issue that they care about. So that's a huge success. The challenges, I think, is also with working with multimedia, is that these creations take a little longer than just writing a letter. And so we're excited about how the different schools and sites are when they're gonna go live. If you look on the map right now, there's not a lot, maybe as much as we know is on the back end waiting. So definitely check in regularly to see how the community is growing. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Also, teachers kind of from all over, and mentors and adults that work with youth. The resources section of our website is a big compilation of resources from all over. Our partners at PBS and other educational organizations, but also things that are sent to us that come across from our teachers. So the election resources that we have kind of hosted on the site are vast. And so I encourage everyone to check those out as well. The project is such that we can't accept letters from sites outside of the United States because of how our geotagging works, but the election resources and the letters themselves as resources can be used by anyone worldwide. I think that's about it. I'm trying to see if there are any questions that I can answer.
I was actually going to ask, just again, from the, I guess, just to know that like this campaign didn't just launch yesterday. And maybe if you could say a few words just about kind of the prep and progress, really since the beginning of the year, and kind of getting teachers and others ready for the campaign.
Definitely. This has its roots, in the 2008 campaign. Letters to the President 1.0 was through Google Docs, and used Google Docs to, share text letters from all over the country. And this latest iteration, we started maybe over a year ago. At KQED sponsored a lot of different media makes and projects to encourage, teachers and adult mentors to start thinking about ways other than just traditional text letters that they could introduce to their students and the youth that they work with to get them excited about the project. And so that kind of prep and laying the groundwork started a while ago. And all of those media makes and all of that training is still on the Letters to the Next President website and as well as the KQED website. And you can access it if you are yourself thinking, well, I would love to introduce video or do this via, a podcast with my youth, but I'm not quite sure how to get started on it. There are still loads of resources there about how to connect with that kind of training, on the adult side, so that you can really be our mentor to the youth.
Great. And I'll put in a little plug here, and I don't know if Chad's on the line and can maybe add links, but Mozilla as a partner also, as many partners did, contributed different types of projects, both to help get mentors and educators ready for the kind of public campaign, and then also for young people to, create letters in multiple formats. And so I see Chad's in the chat there, and he'll post some links, but Mozilla created a few remix activities. So they use our Thimble online code editor, and we have several different templates for things like letters and campaign posters and candidate quotes, so that students can remix them, talk about the things that they care about, while also getting, to play around with some HTML and CSS and things like that.
I've been able to visit some classrooms and see the project in action, and it's been amazing to see how excited the students are, not only to be able to explore an issue that they care about, but to really dive in to the various tools and platforms that they can use to do that. And so it's kind of a project that keeps on giving, because it's a way to really engage youth and let their voice be heard, even though they can't vote yet, or most of them can't vote yet, but also a way to explore some of these amazing tools that we have now.
It is really interesting. You talked about infographics and spoken word, and we're talking about coding. So there really is something, there's something for everyone, and kind of an entry point for students, regardless of what their medium of choice is. So it's very exciting, and we look forward to seeing, I guess, lots of growth between, over the next few weeks as things heat up.
Definitely, and definitely keep checking back, because there are more and more creations every day.
Great. And if anyone has other questions for Rachel, feel free to post them in the Etherpad underline 56. And we'll either get to them in a little bit, or she can also respond directly in the Etherpad.
Yeah, and my Twitter handle is also there. We always like to elevate letters. And so if you want to follow that, and then let us know if you know that your site or someone that you know is publishing letters, and let us know that they're coming, we can also promote them that way. So feel free.
Great. Thank you so much, Rachel. All right, next up, we have Andrew Brennan, who is a sophomore in the Roberson Scholars Leadership Program at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and he's majoring in political science. When he was a junior in high school, he co-founded the Student Voice team at his school, and they helped launch and lead a bunch of different projects to amplify and elevate students as partners in improving schools across Kentucky. Now he's the National Field Director for Student Voice, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about their work now. So I will pass it to you, Andrew.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I just think I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about the history of our organization, some of the work that we're doing now, and then some different projects that people can get involved in if you're interested. As you mentioned, Student Voice is a national organization with the goal of kind of strengthening the student movement for more equity in schools. And so what that looks like from the beginning, at least, was weekly Twitter chats, which some of you might have seen before using the hashtag StuVoice. The idea behind the Twitter chats was to create an online kind of digitally based community for students to be able to connect with each other from all across the country who were doing similar work, kind of revolving around the idea that since students are spending 35 hours a week in the classroom, that they have something to contribute towards improving the classroom at like a policy level. And so we did Twitter chats for a long time, engaged with thousands of students, partnered with organizations like Dell, hosted special guests like Arnie Duncan, But the problem that was emerging with the Twitter chats for us was that we weren't reaching all students. And so we talk about this mission of equity, and we understand how important it is to make sure that we're reaching not just the students who are kind of logged on to Twitter every Monday evening. And so we, this year, launched kind of our first ever kind of national tour with the goal of engaging physically with students and communities all across the country. And so since January, I, along with one of my colleagues, have just been visiting different communities and different schools. We've been hosting roundtable discussions with students, trying to get them to kind of think critically about school. And we've been employing a number of strategies to try and amplify their voices. So for example, we visited an area of South Carolina, which is kind of infamously referred to as the Corridor of Shame. It's a historically underfunded region of the state in terms of kind of as you compare it to other schools. And, you know, we wanted to figure out a way to amplify the student experience and being in some of those schools. We felt like it was a voice, a stakeholder that was missing from the conversation and from the table. And so we spent a week touring kind of schools in these areas. In one school in particular, we came across a student named Robert, who was described to us as the principal of his school, which we thought was funny because he was a senior in high school. But turns out these students were not overstating the case at all. Robert settles disputes between staff members, submits paperwork to the district office. He schedules students for classes to make sure that they can graduate. He organizes graduation. He told us a story about how they were in the middle of graduation and they realized that the diplomas weren't there. And he went out and found them and brought them back to make sure it could happen. So for all intents and purposes, Robert at this school plays a huge role where a lot of the adults have really kind of checked out. This school has gone through something like 5 principals in the past 4 years. They have a lot of turnover and trying to keep teachers involved. And the school itself, just as a facilities question, isn't really doing that great. And so, you know, we saw that the role that Robert was playing in this school as a compelling one, as kind of evidence is what can happen when students are engaged in these meaningful ways. As a 17-year-old, he really was changing a lot of these kids' lives. Changes. How can we give Robert a bigger outlet through which to tell his story? Because we think that, you know, people hearing stories like from Robert and from, you know, many of the students that we've met throughout tour kind of can do 2 things when it comes to education policy. We think it can bridge the empathy gap. So we think, you know, understanding that the way maybe you or I went through high school isn't the same way that everyone across the country goes through high school, whether it's for better or worse. And we think it can bridge the gap between policy and practice. We think putting a human face to some of the kind of nebulous education topics that we discuss kind of at a national and even international level, we think grounds the work in an important way. And so being able to hear directly kind of the story about the student who spent a year taking remedial classes, taking out student loans, and then having to drop out with nothing to show for it afterwards, it's very different from telling you that 45% of students don't graduate from college in 6 years, right? And so we think that that kind of bridging that gap is an important part of our work. And so we've been on tour. We'll continue to be on tour. This year, we're visiting Kentucky School for the Blind and School for the Deaf. And so it'll be interesting hosting some roundtables with students there. And then we're headed up to Detroit, Flint, and Ann Arbor next week, and then California the week after that. So it's a whirlwind of a schedule. One of the projects, though, that we're hoping is one of the big kind of takeaways from this tour that we've started work on now is something called, and I've already said the 2 main goals of the report: to bridge the empathy gap and to bridge the gap between policy and practice. And so we hope that this report will include hundreds of student contributors from around the country. We've already started collecting contributors and stories. The idea is that any student will be able to pick up the report, see a story from another student that they can identify with, and then also be directly linked to a policy proposal that they could pursue to try to address that aspect of the story. And on the flip side, for policymakers to be able to pick this up, look at policies that they're debating at a statewide, district-wide, or even national level, and understand the student story and student perspective that's behind those kind of important policy areas. So we're in the middle of collecting stories for the report. I included a link in the Etherpad for that you can share out to students who you think have compelling stories to share or would be interested in helping be on the team that's putting together the report. It's the bit.ly/contribute to State of Schools. Please definitely do that if you have any ideas of students that would like to be interested. We're really trying to be representative. You can check out our Twitter page for an updated map as to the states that we already have some student contributors for and the states that we're still looking. And then also organizationally speaking, for those organizations out there that are working on various subject matters, our report is going to be split into 12 sections, which follows our Student Bill of Rights. So the sections will range from everything from diversity, inclusivity, to personalized learning, etc. And so if your organization has any interesting policy proposals or bright spots or case studies that they think might be good additions for the report that fall underneath those sections, you can see the different sections at stewrights.org. That's also in the Etherpad, and then you can shoot me an email at andrew@stewvoice.org, which is also, I think, should be in the Etherpad. And we're looking for organizations both to contribute policy proposals and ideas, and also to endorse sections of the report as it comes out, to spread it throughout their networks and to really help kind of ground this education policy conversation with kind of real student experiences. So that's how it works in a nutshell. Now let me see if there are any questions that I missed.
Yeah, there's one question in here, and lots of kind of shout outs and kudos for the work that you guys are doing. It's very inspiring, and there is we actually have a community in Chattanooga in Tennessee, so they've already raised their hand to help pass the link along.
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to
come
visit you in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Yeah, let's make that happen. Also, I know that Student Voice is a partner in the Letters to the Next President 2.0 campaign, and I think this might even be a question from Rachel in here, to see if you have thoughts about, what are some of the issues that you see surfacing that young people are kind of getting most fired up about in relation to the election?
That's a fascinating question. So, I mean, there are different things. In San Francisco, for example, I was just meeting with a brilliant group of students who's working to lower the voting age in the city. And they're working both in San Francisco and in Berkeley to do it. And there are ballot initiatives kind of on the ballot this November for that effort. So students are really mobilizing to try and gain support for that. And they have a crowdfunding campaign and things like that. This election especially has been very interesting as I travel around because, we started the tour off kind of following in the footsteps of the presidential primary schedule. So we were in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina. And that really, was fascinating because we got to hear directly from students on, what issues they were thinking about and then just how they felt about the general rhetoric. I can tell you one of the more impactful experiences for me that we met in Highline School District in the Washington area. Students there, it's a very diverse district. For those that don't know, it attracts a lot of kind of refugee students from around the world. And I was speaking with one who had an experience where a kid came up to him in the middle of class to proclaim that he wanted to kill all Muslims. And that was just what he felt was necessary to say to this kid whose name was Muhammad at the time. And Muhammad and his sister and his mother came here, I think, 3 years ago. They came to America because of fleeing violence and poverty in their old country. And to hear him say, to recount this experience and say, we're not really sure how much better America really is. made me take a pause for a second, for sure. And there are stories like from Muhammad that, you know, we've been hearing throughout this election cycle of students feeling like they're, you know, like that the election rhetoric is seeping into the classroom and affecting the way students are interacting with each other. And so, you know, that's the kind of thing that always, you know, puts me at pause and you know, makes me nervous about the way things are going. But it underscores the importance of this empathy gap that we're talking about, because, you know, we see it as, you know, these students are real. They have real experiences. They have real stories. They're really going through life right now. And, you know, too much, you know, I think in the political debate does, you know, the kind of dehumanizing of these stories occur. And so being able to ground everything back into the kind of realities, experiences that students are having on the ground, I think is key to making more constructive rhetoric around a lot of these issues. So that's a long answer to say, you know, there's lots of diversity amongst students, of course, but it's almost certain that this is an aspect that is really existing in the cycle.
Thank you so much, you know, for joining us today, for all of the important work that you're doing as well. Well, I think, yeah, there's lots of plus ones in here. I think you, if your contact info is in here, you'll have some folks reaching out, maybe to explore some opportunities. Cool. Thank you. Great. So we're going to move on now to our third presenter, Ariam Mogos, who leads the digital learning initiatives for Global Kids. They're a youth development organization both in New York and in DC. They do in and out of school programs that help youth from underserved areas develop the knowledge, skills, experiences, and values they need to succeed in school, to participate effectively in the democratic process, and to become leaders in their communities and around the world. Ariam has worked in Sierra Leone, Kenya, South Africa. She's designed maker education spaces and community-based coding programs for girls. She led the digital media and leadership for the US Department of State's Tech Girls MENA program. And before that, she was with the American Museum of Natural History, where she was helping to bring mobile and web-based technologies into their youth programming. So Ariam, I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Thank you so much, Lainey, and I'm so thrilled and excited to be here and to share a little bit about the Young Innovator Squad. I'm just going to screen share really quick. Can you guys see that?
We can.
Great. So again, I'm really thrilled to be here to talk to everyone about the Young Innovator Squad. And just to give a little bit of background on the project, in partnership with Mozilla, Hive, NYC, and the New York City Parks Department, Computer Resource Centers, we were really thinking about how can we engage young people in sort of civic affairs and leadership opportunities which can leverage technology and create a similar experience to the Hive Learning Network itself. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Hive Learning Network, it's a terrific network of learning institutions across New York City and other cities actually for informal educators at different cultural institutions that really provides them with opportunities to share lessons learned from different initiatives and programs they're running and opportunities to collaborate. And you know, this network has grown over the years to really be a powerful space for informal educators. And we had really been thinking, how can we create this type of network for young people in New York City who are interested in technology, who are interested in STEM careers, you know, but really looking for that community or network. And really a network where they would be the builders of this inclusive community, which they'd also really have ownership of. So yeah, the goal of the project, how can we really engage them in civic affairs and leadership using technology? And so I have an image up here of one of the networking events that we had designed at one of the computer resource centers, where youth had an opportunity to hack political ads. And this was actually on election day. And work in teams and in partnership with the LAMP, they really kind of deconstructed the media and then remixed different political ads that they had chosen. And it was a really great activity. We had used this tool, Media Breaker, that the LAMP had been building for a couple of years. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the LAMP, they're a youth development organization based in New York City, focused on media literacy. And so over the course of a couple months, we held monthly events that focused on supporting youth learn different skills, technology skills, but also soft skills. We also exposed them to different guest speakers and provided networking opportunities so they can really meet each other. And we held all of these events at the computer resource centers at different New York Parks Department locations, which were really great. They were really accessible. They were great community spaces because there were so many youth who were there on weekends and after school. And we were also able to attract youth who might not be aware of these opportunities, who might be at the Parks Department, using computers for leisure or working out or playing basketball or just participating in other activities. So these were really great spaces to recruit youth who weren't already aware of the program. So here's a photo of one of our events at the CRC at Hamilton Fish, where we were showing kids how to use Little Bits. So just to kind of address some of the key challenges of creating this type of program, which again was really a series of events that focused on learning hard and soft skills, networking, and exposure to STEM, but also engaging youth in civic affairs. Co-designing with youth can be really challenging because youth are really, really busy. I had actually recruited about 5 or 6 young people, high school, between the grades of 10 and 12, to design these events with me. And these young people have a lot of things going on. You can see 2 of the young people here, one with the microphone in the picture, facilitating at a CRC in Hansborough, which is in Harlem. And you really have to, as an educator, align yourself to their schedule if you want the co-design to work. We had a lot of Google Hangout calls on weekends, which could be at times difficult for me, but it was better for them. And then also, in this case, the youth also really wanted to keep the initiative really informal, which can be challenging if you're kind of like an organized, regimented educator. You want to meet all your learning objectives, you want things to be organized. And for the youth, that just wasn't the way they wanted to work or their style of working. Roles were really undefined. We had a lot of unstructured collaborative activities. And that can be hard if you want control over the situation, because you want everything to go smoothly. But young people have their own ways of doing things that really could be just as successful, if not more successful, in this case. Another challenge is it can be difficult to push youth to take the lead when you're working alongside. They've been taught to believe that the adult kind of is in the position of power, and when you're really trying to that power or make them feel empowered, they can default to you. And so that can be a little bit challenging. I think when we're talking about key learnings and looking at this program, one of the greatest key learnings for me was that youth are incredible resources for engaging other youth. I like to call them high resource youth. Many of the youth who were on the Young Innovator Squad youth committee were just very confident, outgoing. They were really perfect to lead this initiative because they had all those traits, but they also knew how to be inclusive, how to be encouraging, how to bring out the best in each other, and other youth who would be attending the events, who might not have had as much experience with technology or media as them. And they were just great at recruiting those youth who didn't have as much exposure. And so this is one of our youth facilitating a workshop at McCarran Pool in Brooklyn. And another thing I want to add is youth really do care about issues in their communities, but they need different pathways to channel their activism. And I think this is where technology and media can be really powerful tools. Leading with these issues can be a great hook for engaging youth who haven't had as much exposure in coding and other activities, which might seem difficult or, challenging to master. And I think that's it.
Oh, okay, sorry, I was unmuting myself. Thanks, Ariam. There are a few questions in here for you, but one I was gonna ask is if you could say a little more about what some of the issues were that the youth in the program were most interested in, and maybe some of the ways that you supported them to learn more about and get involved in those issues.
Sure. Most of the issues that they were interested in were very community-based. So it varied between the different community, by the computer resource centers where we were holding the program. For example, the event that we had on Election Day was really focused on media and just hacking the media and political ads and some of the rhetoric we were hearing during the election, targeting certain ethnic groups. A lot of the youth felt very passionate about that rhetoric and dismantling that type of rhetoric and remixing it to provide some truth. So yeah, I think it really varied from each event. We held another event where we had youth in the Bronx create and just make basic prototypes of an application that would allow youth to participate more easily in the political process and civic process to address issues like environment, crime. And when I say environment, specifically in their neighborhoods, trash not being picked up on time and, the lack of parks. And these are things that youth really care about in their neighborhoods. And so they designed a prototype for how can we make sure the city hears us better in a way that's fun and engaging for us, and how can we see what other kids think about these issues? Is it as important to them as it is to us? So those are some of the activities and issues that came up over the course of the 6 months.
Great. And there's a new question that was added about maybe if you could say more about what the decision-making process looked like. How did the groups, decide together what to focus on or even what to do?
Yeah, so again, I'll just say again that roles were undefined, and we didn't really have a decision-making process because the youth preferred for this to be very informal. I think that made them feel like they had more ownership over it, where if it was very structured, it was like a global kids program, if that makes sense. So we didn't really have a structured process for making decisions. Someone would just maybe bring up an idea and someone else might second it, and then maybe someone else would make a change to it or a suggestion. So it was very informal, and this was a very easygoing group of kids, so we didn't have a lot of conflict in the group. Yeah.
Right. There was a question kind of in the section below, which I think you spoke to a little bit, just about what strategies you use to create environments that are driven by young people's interest rather than kind of mandated from the top down. And so you talked about co-design and some of the challenges and learnings with that. And I wonder, Rachel or Andrew, if you had other thoughts on other strategies to kind of help youth kind of co-create those programs and activities.
Well, we work with young people back in Kentucky. So before Student Voice, back when I was working kind of in Kentucky, our entire process was a co-creation model. And then like Ariam said, there are a number of challenges that you face when you're trying to co-create with youth. So the fact that they're in school all day, the fact that they, oftentimes are coming into their capacity still, different things like that. We have a number of strategies. We like to use video conferences with students so that we don't have to kind of be with them physically, so that they don't have to kind of travel physically. And it allows us to have different kinds of interactions with them. So video conferences. We try to figure out ways to make entry kind of very easy entry, so that there's not a big obstacle for them to overcome. We like to make it so that, like, at a minimum, you can be a member that comes to the meetings and contributes at meetings at a certain period of time per month. And we see that that's helpful, letting people ease into things. And then the other thing is, we really believe in co-creation kind of with adults. And Ariam kind of got to this point as well. So we're not going to just throw students into a room and have them talking to themselves. We like it when students and adults are kind of at the same table, leveraging kind of the strengths that each group brings to the table. And we just think that's a better way to model both in our structure what we hope to see in the broader kind of education community, which is students and adults kind of decision-making partners at the same table. So those are just a couple of our strategies.
And Letters to the Next President is often done in a very structured school setting, although not always. But what I've seen work really successfully is that in those situations that are naturally structured, for the teacher or adult mentor to step way back and give and provide lots of time to explore and encourage the students to talk to each other as opposed to going to the adults for questions. And so I've seen that really work successfully, where students are talking about their issue with other students who are interested in that issue, and the teacher or the mentor has stepped way back and is there for, as a resource, but just one of many resources.
Great, thank you so much. I guess there are a few other questions in the pad, but I wonder, or that were kind of pre-populated in the pad. I wonder if there are any others from the audience, or if anyone, Rachel, Andrew, or Ariam, if you have any other questions to pose to the group. And it's okay if you don't. I just wanted to open it up in the case that you did. I think we are coming to time for the call. So Christina, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what's upcoming. Well, we're going to kind of clean up the notes in here, and there's lots of links that I think will be useful for those who are either joining us live or who might be watching the stream later. But I want to make sure we point out a few other things that are coming up on the calendar.
Yeah, and I would just mention, even after we're done here today live, feel free to continue engaging with the questions. That goes for our guest speakers today and for those participating with us just on the Etherpad. We'd love to continue to draw out some of those questions and resources, so continue with us there. Next week, we actually have rescheduled our Maker Party and Copyright Mozilla Curriculum Workshop for Thursday, September 29th. That's on line 142. So if you're interested in Maker Party, if you have any questions, if you're really passionate about copyright, specifically as it pertains to the EU, but also how it can be affected in different ways around the world, definitely join us for that. It's going to be a really great conversation. And then in October, we are going to be celebrating Ada Lovelace Day for several weeks in the month, which is really exciting. We have a curriculum workshop on actual Ada Lovelace Day, where we're going to be celebrating women in STEM and science, Ada Lovelace specifically. And as well as for the community call, we're going to have different speakers and resources for women in STEM on both of those. So that's going to be really great. And then we're going to follow up both of those events with a tweet chat on October 19th. And we are partnering with the Mozilla Science team to do both the tweet chat and the community call. And I believe they're going to be on the curriculum workshop as well. So it's going to be really cool merging of two communities, Mozilla Learning and Mozilla Science, to see, what resources are available and how we can collaborate to really support women in science and in STEM. So we hope that you can join us for that. And if you have any upcoming events or projects or topics that you want to add, there's space at the bottom of the Etherpad to do that as well.
Great. Well, thanks again so much, Rachel, Andrew, and Ariam. Really appreciate you taking the time to share more about your work and maybe even connect some of the opportunities here. And thanks to everyone who was able to join us live or later. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.